All right, we are live. Let's go live on Instagram. Okay, we're live on Instagram now. All right, here comes the intro. You're listening to the Grow Clinton podcast. Grow Clinton is a 501c6 nonprofit economic, community development, and tourism organization based in Clinton, Iowa. For more information, visit growclinton.com. Again, that's growclinton.com. Now, back to the show. What's happening, everybody out there in podcast land? Thank you so much for listening to another episode of the Grow Clinton podcast. That's right. You know it. You love it. It's recorded right here in the Grow Clinton Studio, 721 South 2nd Street in Clinton, Iowa, located right along the mighty Mississippi River. Grow Clinton, as the intro said, nonprofit organization focusing on community development, economic development, and tourism. As always, I am your host, Andy Sokolovich, the president and CEO of Grow Clinton, joined by Jenny Home from our office. Jenny, what's happening?
I don't know. I just got to say, when you talk about the mighty Mississippi River and it's spring and it's getting nice out, boy, the things people do down there, so much fun.
So much fun. Yeah, I'm not a river rat.
No.
I always say this. I'll say it again. I don't own a boat. I don't own a jet ski. I don't own pools. I don't own a spa or a hot tub. But I have friends that have all of those things.
Oh, yeah. You don't have to own it.
So when it's time to go out on the river, I love to join my friends for a good time. And yeah, spring has sprung. I'm starting to see some of my annuals and the perennials.
Oh, I love that.
Just the perennials are popping up. Annuals I don't plant until after Mother's
Day. Otherwise they freeze.
A rule of thumb. Yeah. But we are recording episode 98 of the Grow Clinton podcast. On this day, the 7th of April, year 2025. And I feel like our subject for today is perfect.
Me too.
Yeah, just given the circumstances that we see ourselves in the country politically,
right.
I believe this is very timely. So.
And the way you're feeling about things that are happening in your life right now.
Yeah. There's one thing that's constant, and there's one thing you can always believe in. And that is high-speed fiber internet. That's right, folks. The Grow Clinton podcast is brought to you by and powered by Miles Communications, offering us high-speed internet, also telephone and television services. Check them out online at milestelephone.com. Again, milestelephone.com. So, Jenny, we have Dr. Charlie Minnick in the house again.
Yes.
Is this our fourth one?
Mm-hmm.
For the 4th session of the Leadership Unlocked series. And we're going to be talking about managing conflict. Dr. Minnick, thank you so much for joining us.
Hey, my pleasure. It's always, conflicts there's no shortage of conflict. I mean, the key is how do we manage it or deal with it. So I think that's it's in our personal lives, professional lives. It's everywhere. And I think part of the thing is, when people hear the word conflict, too often it's like bad. Oh, bad. Well, not really. In some ways, I think if you're gonna grow and move the organization forward and people forward, you have to have constructive conflict to do that about things that matter. With any kind of project, it's not a personal attack. You keep it. How do you move things forward to a successful end?
And that's what people think sometimes. I think with conflict, it's more insult than conflict.
Yeah, I think it's you think about as you go through this, it's always good to be want to be hard on the problem and soft on the people.
Right.
Yeah, if you want to attack the problem, not you're an idiot. That's not helpful. You really can't fight, and then it escalates. And you can't fight anger with more anger, and people start yelling at each other, and then that's not generally a good approach. So I think,
before you know it, you got hurt feelings.
Yeah, and then you got strained relationships,
right?
And it makes it more difficult. But
so, Charlie, real quick, the Leadership Unlocked series that we're hosting is a no-cost opportunity for you to learn from subject matter experts. Again, this is our 4th session in the series. We will be hosting a live classroom-style environment here at Grow Clinton on the 16th of April. That's a Wednesday
at 2 p.m. Again, the Leadership Unlocked series focusing on managing conflict. If you want to register, there is a Facebook event. Also, there is a link within the description of this show so you can register. But today, we're offering you a short little teaser as to what's to be expected.
Yeah. So, and I have a prop for later, so we'll get to the prop. But but I think part of the problem with conflict is that it's generally managed poorly in a lot of ways. That's what gets it into trouble. So, and I think I found over the years, if you're going to effectively manage conflict, you have to manage the uncomfortable, is what you have to do. So, I mean, it's generally can be uncomfortable on the front end, but if you delay and avoid important topics, important conversations, somebody told me a long time ago, if you delay, you pay.
Yeah.
It gets worse, things escalate, and then having to manage the uncomfortable becomes even worse.
Well, because it's easier to ignore it sometimes.
Yeah.
It's kind of like your health. You know, I mean, it's your work health or your relationship health. You got to take care of it.
Yeah, and it just makes it worse. I think you have to, and always there's a book it's called Eat the Frog.
Yeah.
Where you
classic.
It is, and what you have to do is try to get the most uncomfortable thing in your day out of the way first. And sometimes it's this. You know, you have to have these conversations, and it's eating at you, and then what people who are conflict averse do is they'll put it off, and they'll come up with stuff throughout the day, and then pretty soon, oh, it's the end of the day. We didn't get to it today. We'll do it tomorrow. And then tomorrow comes, the next day comes. So I'm a big fan of Eat the Frog. Do those most uncomfortable things first. And I think from a leadership standpoint, what you have to do is provide what I call psychological safety for people. And what that means is this. I think if people get into a situation in their minds, they think of something really quick. It's the risk of saying something versus the risk of saying nothing. And they get into these conflict things, and if you don't feel safe and your opinion matters, chances are you're going to shut up and say nothing. It's safer that way.
Yeah. So within the description of this course, again, the in-person course is April 16th at 2 p.m. here at Grow Clinton. But some verbiage that was in the description stated that conflict usually occurs, and I'm summarizing, when somebody feels like their beliefs are being challenged.
Yeah, and I think and the more we hold those beliefs dear to us, the more escalated it can get.
Right.
If it's something that we care deeply about, something that we value, and we feel it's being impeded upon, intruded upon, it gets worse. It tends to escalate quicker.
And we see that in today's, again, political climate of our nation here in the United States of America. Regardless of your political party affiliation, people's beliefs are being challenged, and they're being challenged by one party or the other, and it's causing conflict.
Yeah, and I think we saw some of that reaction to conflict on Saturday across the country with different rallies that were held because people feel something that they hold very near and dear to themselves is being challenged. So they had this pretty escalated response to it, is what happened. So I think but it is about, and it talks about like mindsets and skill sets, and your mindset's about how do you think about conflict? Is it productive? Is it bad? All those type of things. And then conflict management is certainly a skill. Yeah, it takes practice, takes a lot of stuff to get to that point. I think every human being on the face of the earth needs a conflict management skills or a course or training.
Yeah, it applies whether it's in your professional environment or your home environment.
Yeah,
So if you're going to talk about conflict, what's your first, just give us a teaser. What is your first step when you feel like you're being challenged and it's going to turn into a conflict? What is your first step?
Well, the first thing I want to try to do is and it plays into this. When I used to do a class on conflict, what happens, we would have people talk about in week one, a conflict that they're personally kind of embroiled in or one in the near past. And almost to a person, what they did was they thought it was the other person's fault. So I think to begin with, you have to think about what part am I playing in this deal? And that's what, as we go through the course and evolved and grew, it was like, you know what? I probably had something to do with this.
Yeah, placing yourself in the other person's shoes.
Yeah, so I think part of it is, so what have I done? What part am I playing in this conflict? And I think it could be, maybe it's just a bad day. Maybe it's something I care about. Maybe it's, life is just dumped on me and it's at the wrong time. So why am I? So I think sometimes it's okay to back away. And like I said, especially in this technology day and age, I always tell people hit the think button before you hit the send button. Yeah, I think we probably talked about it. I mean, I think that's critical. Hit the think button because things are escalating. You're just typing away. Oof.
Yeah, we see it all the time.
Oh my gosh.
Especially, in the career field that we're in, economic and community development. Sometimes you have to challenge the beliefs of others in order to move the ball forward. And that can be especially when it's about change. Change is very difficult to manage, and some people just love to keep it the way it has always been. And for some, that is their comfort zone. And for others, that's an opportunity for improvement.
Yeah, people get a little, change. And we'll do a topic on change down the road a little bit, but change is hard. Change causes conflict, and because people want to know, and what causes a conflict is people want to know is, well, what's it mean to me? How's it going to impact me personally, professionally, my family, all those type of things. So I think that's what we try to do. And I think when I've worked with conflict, I always try to do a couple things. I want to figure out, especially if I have to mediate it, which is an interesting deal, or if I'm sitting one-on-one with someone, I want to figure out what got us here. I'm not a big guy of living in the past, because some people are called archaeologists when they deal with conflict, because they're always good at digging up the past.
Right.
So, but I want to know how the past got us where we are. So, but I'm not going to live in the past. So I want to know, so what got us here? What happened? What, a little bit of the story. And then I also want to know, what do you want to see happen? What's your desired outcome here?
How do you see this
Yeah.
moving forward?
Yeah, and then I think you have to ask, then you recap. The greatest communication tool we have is the ability to ask questions, I think. I wholeheartedly believe that. So if I'm hearing you right, I'm hearing A, B, C, D. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So everybody's on this. So we're hearing that sort of stuff. So I think that's important to do as you try to do that. And I think part of it is there's in conflict, but there's interest in positions. But positions could be, one for good or bad, it could be like pro-life versus pro-choice. Those are two very different positions. And, people kind of draw a line saying, interested could be this. So I've taught lots and lots of classes over the year. So people might be, let's say assignments due on Wednesday, and life happens, things happen, people need they need an extension. Okay. If I was in a position sort of thing, would be, my position is due Wednesday, too bad for you. But the interest that we might have is to help the student successfully complete the assignment. So let's give someone an extension to do it, focused on the interest of completing the assignment successfully, as opposed to it's due on Wednesday, from heck or high water. So we get this interest versus position thing. So I think we try to figure out, how can we focus on interests more than positions. That's one thing we'll talk about, because we'll look at a couple different things. We'll look at a little bit, and we talked, I think, last time about the 5 dysfunctions of a team.
Yep.
And we'll talk about the first 2 dysfunctions, which is trust and fear of conflict, because those two certainly fit together. If you don't trust people, how are you going to have debate about things that matter? And we'll give some more practical tips on how do you do that. How do you try to create trust so you can have dialogue that matters? Okay. So, and then we'll look at, there's another great book called Getting to Yes.
Very familiar.
It's
Actually,
a great book.
Former school administrator for Comanche, Tom Parker, was a big Getting to Yes man. He introduced that book to me several years ago, and actually taught some classes on it. And I'm a huge fan. I have several copies of the book. If you want one, just come and see me.
Yeah. So we'll look at that sort of approach. It's about, how do you look at those type of things? It's, you got to separate the people from problem, focus on interest, not positions. How do you work to create options that'll satisfy both folks, and then how do you try to negotiate successfully with people that might have more power than you do? So how do you do that?
Yeah.
So we'll talk about all that. And that brings us to my prop.
The orange. The orange.
All right.
So I'll give you a little. So we'll use this orange. You probably wonder, what the heck does this orange have to do with conflict? But I'll go more into it. So we'll tease it a little bit first.
Tease. Don't give it all
I
away.
won't give it all away. So we'll talk about how we can use this orange to effectively manage conflict and negotiation.
All right.
Just kind of a way, how do we do that?
So again,
talk
the
about that.
event, we are talking to Dr. Charlie Minnick, who's partnering with Grow Clinton to offer a series on leadership called Leadership Unlocked. The next session is on managing conflict. That's the topic of today's conversation. This event will happen on 16th of April, Wednesday at 2 p.m. If you want to register, it is free. That's right, no cost. You can put your cheeks in a seat here at Clinton, Grow Clinton at 721 South 2nd Street, or through your registration, you will receive a link to an MS Teams meeting where you can participate virtually. Again, I did put the registration link over the Facebook event page with all the information in the show notes here below this broadcast.
Yeah. So we'll look at all those, and we'll also look at it from like the 5 dysfunctions of a team sort of approach, and then we'll also look at there's different ways people, the natural modes that they handle conflict. So like avoiding, competing, collaborating, compromising, and avoiding or accommodating is the other one. So I think back to my early days, what my go-to thing was, and it was much more accommodating, which everybody's more interest is more important than yours. Or you try to please everybody. Yeah, good luck with that.
Yep.
And so I learned that the hard way. That's not the way to go at it, because I was too concerned early on that people liked you, that everybody had to like you.
No,
That's probably not gonna happen. What happens is, if you try to accommodate everybody, what I found over time is they really just take advantage of you.
Yep.
That's all that really happens.
A little bit of blood in the water. And
Yeah,
the
yeah,
sharks
yeah.
sniff it out quick.
Yeah, so
Right.
that's all that really.
But there's a big difference between that and being able to identify what matters. You know, like people, you get into a conflict. Are you going to talk about when you should just go,
It's not worth
it's
it.
not
Yeah,
worth
so
it.
we'll talk. So that's avoiding. So there are certain times you should avoid stuff.
Okay.
Part of it
All
can
right.
be, maybe if you're going to avoid, it's that I need to find out more information about what's going on. So it's okay to push back a little bit. Okay, let's talk about this tomorrow, next week, because I want to make sure we have all the facts. Or you can avoid when things are really hot.
Sometimes
Things
that's
get
smart.
really
Yeah.
heated. Sometimes you just got to turn off the burner for a bit.
Right.
Yep, take a
And go,
break.
okay, let's
Diffuse.
back off for a minute. So avoiding is okay. I think you don't want to avoid too long, especially if it's something that matters, because you might delay your pay and it's going to get worse and it might explode on you or any of
complex.
that kind of stuff. So, but I think you just have to be kind of aware of what your default approach. And there's lots of things out there.
That's a
There's-
good point.
There's a Thomas Kilmann instrument, it's called. It gets into, it'll answer a bunch of questions. It'll show you what's your natural conflict managing mode. It's kind of cool. It's called TKI model, a Thomas Kilmann instrument, I think it's called. So you can do it. It'll kind of give you what's your natural way you handle conflict. And it's based on how you answer these questions.
Yeah.
So it's really
Well,
cool.
It's very interesting, Charlie, and we love having you on the show to discuss these different subject matters regarding leadership development. But I know personally, my own leadership development, military versus civilian, much different.
Way different.
Much different. If there was ever a conflict in the military, you could just slap your shoulder and show your rank. And
Yeah.
the higher the rank, that's the winner, right? And it wasn't always the healthiest. And I will say, unfortunately, I adopted that model in my later years, and there was no negotiating. It was my way or the highway, and that wasn't a healthy model. And I remember, yes, I seemed to get my way often as a result of my rank. However, it didn't benefit the organization. It benefited me solely. And it was a very selfish way of leading. And as I transitioned out of the military into the civilian sector, I quickly realized that that wasn't going to get me anywhere. And if I wanted to get to yes, I had to learn how to manage conflict and effectively negotiate and understand the beliefs, as we alluded to earlier, of the individual that I'm engaging.
Yeah. So that's more of a competing approach when you look at how people deal with it. It's like it's my
Winner
way or the
versus
highway.
loser.
Yeah.
Yep.
If you don't like it, well, kind of the beatings will continue until morale improves.
That's right.
That's a high competing. Somebody'd run over their own mother to get what they want. The ends justify the means. That's a highly, highly, highly competing person. It's just win at all costs, and they will struggle with that relationship
I told Charlie before we went on, I was kind of lucky because I had really good examples with my mom and my aunt, and they didn't have conflict. They still don't. But what they do when they have a conflict with someone, they say, first thing they say is, "What's going on?" So that they get their side of it, and then they keep it really low key. And I was really brought up like that. Is what's going on?
Yeah,
first.
that's that listening part. Okay, what got us here? What's happening? And
Yeah.
it's interesting what people think, because people might come from different, they have their own perspectives.
You might have the wrong idea.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you just never know, and it's amazing how you can.
Well, I mean, everything back from your childhood honestly morphs your leadership style. Like
Right.
you said, watching your parents, mother and father, or whoever your guardians were, engage in conflict management. That's always going to happen.
Yep.
It could be as little as what's for dinner to
Yeah.
paying taxes, So it's
Paying
just,
taxes.
it's just one of those things where
The checkbook.
you have to develop your own leadership style. And we're glad that we have Charlie here to help us do that.
Yes, well, and you're right. There's no one size fits all.
No,
I mean,
there's
that's the thing. Sometimes people think with leadership in general, it's one size fits all. Well, a lot of times, it depends. I'm a firm believer in broad perspective. It's about leaders, followers, and a situation. That's what it's all about. How do those three things meld together or not? Because followers can be, you're going to work with someone who's brand new to an organization differently than someone who's been there a long time. And if you try this cookie cutter approach, if you can be, get right half the time, you're pretty lucky. But you just got to read people. It's about relationships. And I think generally if conflict can be managed, even resolved, relationships will tend to improve.
And I feel personally that the leadership examples that we are exposed to today in mainstream media,
No.
where have all the leaders gone?
Really?
Where has anybody been able to support the ideas and the beliefs of others while managing their own different beliefs and ideas?
It's like pro wrestling.
In a way, it's just,
Yeah.
it's very difficult. I mean, I've always tried to emulate my leadership style off of somebody that I perceive to be successful. And that is helpful to a point. But then if their leadership style works for them, it may not work for you, because I am a mix of avoiding conflict, often to a fault, and B, now in my older age, I'm 42, I'll be 43 on the 19th of this month, but I find that I am more willing to listen to other people share their life experiences, to identify why they feel the way they do, because you never know what has impacted them throughout their life. And it may be a jaw-dropping scenario where they lost a loved one or something due to the fact of X, and now X has become a part of their life, and they're trying to negotiate a way around that. And if you're not aware that happened to them, then you often go into a conversation or negotiation blind to their reality.
Yeah, that's why listening is so important in communication stuff. I mean, too often we listen to respond instead of listening to understand.
Yes, sir.
We listen, it's like somebody responds, did you even hear what the heck I said? No, because they listen to respond as opposed to trying to understand what you're saying and ask questions. So if I'm hearing you right, here's what I'm hearing. I hear somebody's story. That's what molds us, is our kind of our story and our history, and how do we do that kind of stuff?
Instead
And what
of
got us? It's hard. It's hard.
Formulating a crushing blow
Yeah.
back.
Yeah, it's hard. It's,
not
it's like,
listening.
in some ways, if you listen to people, now I get it a little bit. Now I get it.
Yeah.
Why people are and the way they are, and it's just. But that's why I think I'm never a fan of this soft skill thing. I think they're more complex than soft. There's nothing soft about dealing with human nature.
No.
There's nothing soft about dealing with conflict. There's nothing soft about dealing with change. I'm more of a fan of complex skills than soft skills, but that's just a me thing. But there's nothing real, because they are soft as people and they're squishy. There's nothing easy about all this.
Yeah,
stuff.
I remember early on in my career, I was exposed to a situation where there was conflict involved, and it blindsided me. And the person that was coming at me or accusing me of certain things didn't even know who I was, didn't know my life story, didn't know my background, didn't know where I grew up, didn't know my experiences, my beliefs, my passions, things that I'm willing to fight for, my family dynamic, but they were just accusing me, basically just judging a book by its cover.
On site.
You know, you are a white male in a leadership position, therefore you must be this.
Right.
And it was very hard for me to deal with because I wanted to rebut and I wanted to come back equally as aggressive as they were coming to me, but that wasn't the correct thing to do. So I took a couple chapters out of the Getting to Yes. And, you know, at that point, it was just to void that conflict at the time and then figure out ways to make ends meet and come back and resolve something in a very effective manner.
Yeah, sometimes you just got to back away for a bit. It's not, you know, it's just, you just got to back away for
You
a
do,
bit. 'Cause it's
and-
going to get worse and then feelings get hurt, which makes it worse. And
Even if
then
you-
you become hard on the people and not so, and softer on the problem. And it just, all heck can break loose.
All right, Charlie. Well, thank you. That was again a teaser for what's coming up on the 16th of April. That's a
Thank you,
Wednesday.
Orange.
The orange.
You got to
The
find
orange.
out about the orange
Find
and
out.
how it's going to
Find
help
out.
you.
And we'll have giveaways too. I'm gonna bring some books. I'm gonna give away
Awesome.
to whoever attends, either online or in person that day. So I have some books we'll kind of give away.
Nice.
There you go. Just cruise on over to the Book of Faces. Click on Grow Clinton. Look at our events coming up again, April 16th, starting at 2 p.m. live here in the Grow Clinton office at 721 South 2nd Street, or you can participate virtually via Microsoft Teams. So, Charlie, it's always a pleasure, sir.
Always a pleasure.
I learn something new every time we have the chance to
Oh, yeah.
engage. And I'm very excited for this session on managing conflict.
It'll be fun, and hope we can make everybody get a little longer, a little better in the world. Hopefully,
That would be
Yep.
great.
we'll try.
That would
in our
be
little
great.
world,
In
we'll
our
try.
world.
Can't
That'd be
we
great.
all just
Get
get
along.
Why can't we all just get along?
I'm about to bring drum circles back, kumbaya. I mean,
there you
anything.
I'll be
We
there.
just need a little peace,
Let's do it. Let's do it.
Exactly.
peace of mind.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right, everybody. Jenny, today at 2:00,
Yes.
this is a double header day of
Oh, I love
podcasts.
it.
So
Yes.
today at 2:00, we'll be interviewing Gabby Torres, local artist, also the think tank part of Paint It Back, I guess. She comes up with all the ideas.
Wow.
She's
Yeah,
awesome.
she
And
is.
she'll be joined by Kip Simpson, who sits on their board. If you're not familiar with Paint It Back, it is a nonprofit organization that has a great festival that comes to Clinton. We're going on 3 years.
Yes.
And they basically take an abandoned building we have on the north end. They whitewash the building and they bring in all of these successful professional artists to put on some amazing murals, live displays of art, and it's very cool. So we'll be talking to the Paint It Back folks today at 2:00.
Can't wait.
Nice.
Love it.
And we're creeping up on episode 100.
100.
Yeah, so I'm very excited about that.
Me
but
too.
want to say thank you again to Miles Communications for their continued support and powering the Grow Clinton podcast. Check them out, milestelephone.com. That's it for today's episode, folks. We'll see you, I guess, around the block. Where will we see people?
All over.
You see people all over.
I do. I
you
see people all over.
friends and fans of the podcast. all
I
over.
do. I hear.
All right, everybody, stay awesome. We'll talk to you soon. See you.
Thank you for listening to the Grow Clinton podcast. Be sure to subscribe and follow us on all your socials. Until next time, see ya.
All right, we're still live. Let me stop that.